this, it's all about input. When you're doing comps, it's all about putting in the right filters and putting in the right criteria. That's what it's all about. So whatever software or platform you're utilizing to run your comps and find out what properties are sold for, you got to make sure you put in the right filters and criteria. So when it comes to comps, you want to look for sold properties only. We're not looking at comps that are currently on the market, currently pending, that's listed for sale, because those are not comparables, right? We can't say that that property sold for that. If a property is pending for 200,000, that property might close at 170 for whatever reason. There might be price reductions, there might be concessions, whatever it might be. So we can't say that's a legitimate comp, right? Same thing for a property that's listed for sale. The property is listed for sale at 200,000. That doesn't mean it's going to sell for 200,000, and that doesn't mean that's what it's worth. I can put my property up for sale for 300,000 or 500,000, but if nobody's willing to buy it for that, if nobody's willing to buy it for that, if nobody's willing to buy it for that, then that's not what it's worth. If I put my house on the market for 500,000, I get offers at 250, then that's probably what the property is going to be sold for, 250, right? Not 500,000. So very important that you're looking at sold properties only, right? There's some instances where you can kind of waver off of that a little bit just to get an idea. You may do pending just to get an idea, just to kind of see what's going on in the area, whatever. But sold properties only. Time frame. The time frame is very important. You want to look for within the last 3 months for the most accuracy, right? We cannot be looking at comps that sold last year. Market change. Market changes every month. Values of properties go up and down in certain areas every month, every day, actually. Right? So for the most accuracy, you want to look at properties that sold in the last 3 months. Okay. Now, there's some modifications to that, right? If you go down here, you can extend the time frame, right? So all these things have certain modifications that goes with it, right? But last 3 months. Then I stretch it out to the last 6 months. Last 6 months, that's probably going to be the furthest back I go to see if I can find any comparables in a specific area. Now we got the radius, right? You want to be looking at properties that sold in the same neighborhood, ideally, right? Or no more than a half a mile away from that subject property. They also say here, avoid crossing main roads or highways. That's market specific. I don't really see too much, difference in that with the comps, really, depending on the areas, obviously. So you have to kind of figure out your market when it comes to that part of it. But ideally, you want to be looking at the same. You want to be looking at the same same neighborhood or no more than a half a mile away from your subject property for the best accuracy. Now, here's a modification to that, right? You can push it up to a mile. That'll probably be the furthest I'll go. Next, bedrooms and bathrooms, right? You want to look for properties that have the exact same bedrooms and bathrooms or less, right? It says here, do not compare a 2-1, a 2-bed, 1-bath, to a 3-2, a 3-bed, 2-bath, right? Because obviously the 2-1, the 3-2 is going to be more than the 2-1, right? So if anything, you want to compare down, right? If I have my subject property is a 4-bed, 2-bath, I want to be comparing that down to probably like a 3-2 if I'm not seeing any 4-bed, 2-baths in the market or in the area. I don't want to be comparing it to a 5-3 or whatever the case may be, unless I have to, because the square footage, once it gets up there, the square footage gets a little bit different, right? But if I don't have any properties that's, if I'm looking at my 3-2 and I don't see any 3-2s and all I'm seeing is 4-2s or whatever the case may be, I'm probably going to add 15. Well, from the comps, I'm probably going to subtract 15,000 for each additional bedroom or each additional bathroom that those properties have. So if my property is a 3-2 and I'm looking at a 4-2, and that 4-2 sold for 315, I'm going to go ahead and say that my property will probably sell for 300. I'm going to just subtract 15,000 off from that additional bedroom. That's how I'm going to look at it. but that's worst case scenario. Does that make any sense? You guys get that? Okay. If I lose anybody, let me know. It's okay. Speak up. Now, the next thing, the year built. Year built, very important. Me personally, I would like to stay in the same decade. So if the property is built in 1965, I would like to look at properties that were built from 1960 to 1969 within that 10-year period for the best accuracy. Me personally. Now, you can go older, obviously, but when you go older, you start getting into some historical houses sometimes, right? So really depends on your market, because I understand like some markets, especially up north, those houses up there, they're historically they're older. They're built in 1920, 1911, things like that. So you have to understand your market and kind of figure out where you need to be on that spectrum. But for the best accuracy, I personally like to look for that same decade, within that same decade. Now, if it's not within the same decade, you can plus or minus 5 years or something like that. So if it's a 1967, you can look at 1972, right? 5 years more, and then within the same decade. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, I have here as well, if built in 1995 or newer, no more than 5 years newer. So if the house was built in 1995, I don't want to look at properties built in 2005 or newer. And the reason why, because those houses, they are built different. A 1995 house versus a 2002 house, 2003 house is way different. It's a different style, right? So you want to keep that kind of narrow. Next thing, very important, square footage. Like these are key factors in criteria when you're looking at your comps that you have to take into account when you're searching for your comps, right? Square footage, very important. Plus or minus 300 square feet of the subject property. So if my subject property is 1,200 square feet, I'm gonna put a max of 1,500 square feet. I don't want to see any properties whose square footage is more than 1,500. And then I'm gonna put a minimum of 1,200, and I want to put a minimum of 900 square feet. I don't want to see any properties that have less than 900 square feet. So my range is going to be from 900 to 1,500 square feet, right? So that's plus 300 or minus 300 from my subject property. All right. Next thing, same property type. You got single family, condo, townhouse, multifamily, mobile home, etc. You want to make sure you're comparing the same property type. You can't be comparing a single family property with a condo, or a condo with a townhouse, or a mobile home with a condo, right? You want to make sure you're comparing apples to apples when it comes to that. That's pretty simple there. Same property style, right? You got your ranch style house, you got your split level house, you got your 2-story house, you got a 3-story house sometimes, you got, things like that. So you want to compare the same type, right? I can't really compare a ranch with a 2-story house. And to be honest, those two houses are probably going to be built in different years anyways, right? A ranch style house is probably going to be a little bit older than a 2-story house, right? So that's probably not even going to make sense. So if once you put in the dates, right, the year that it was built, you shouldn't even be seeing any variance like that. But I understand some properties are weird, right? Some areas are weird. So you might see some variance like that.
Question.
Yep. What you got?
So I'm looking at this little list: property styles, ranch, split level, and 2-story. What's the difference between all these three? Like,
So,
especially split level and 2-story.
all right. So let me show you a split level real quick. 762. This is a split level, right? You see how it's split right here? It kind of has like a ranch style right here, but it's split,
Okay.
right? That's a split level. A 2-story, and this is a ranch right here. That's a split level. This is a ranch style. if it's come up. This is a ranch style. Well, this is a duplex, but it's a ranch style duplex, right? It's just one level.
Okay.
And then a 2-story is essentially, let me see if I can find one real quick. Something like this, or like this right here.
Okay, I got you.
Well, that's a townhouse, look like it, but this right here. That's a 2-story.
Okay, got you.
Yep. Is that it?
Yep.
All right, cool. So you want to make sure you're comparing apples to apples. You want to be comparing different things there, right? Next thing, garages and carports. That's important as well, right? You want to make sure you're comparing properties that have either the same garage or carport. If they have a 2-car garage, 1-car garage, they have a carport. If they don't have a carport, if they don't have a garage, you want to look into that stuff. That's kind of important, right? In determining value. Because as you start looking at comps and looking at comparables, you're going to see the houses that have garages, carports, etc. They're going to be sold for a little bit higher price. Now, if you don't see that, if your property doesn't have that, I would deduct probably around 20,000, 25,000 off of that price, right? So if my property doesn't have a garage or a carport, just regular, and the other property has one, and we see it, being sold for 300,000, I'm gonna go ahead and say mine will probably sell for 275 because it doesn't have that. Pool or no pool, that works as well. You can look into that. I really don't pay much mind into that because I'm not in the market to have a lot of pools. So that doesn't really apply to me as much, but that can be, something. If you're like in Florida, I'm pretty sure that's going to be a big determining factor when it comes to comparables as well. Hot mic. And then, like I said in the beginning, use multiple sources, right? And then there go to modifications. And we went, over the modifications as we went through this thing. So this is the checklist. These are all the things you need to do. Once you put all these things in, right, all these filters, all these criteria, then you're going to be able to see what properties show up that fit that criteria, that match your specific property. Any questions about this? Any of it?